Now, I'm not saying SEGA would ever do it, but while I was riding on the bus tonight, just out of curiosity, I was reading some of the adult fan fiction stories on fanfiction.net that a lot of people, and I mean a lot of people, fans, if you will, put up. And some of them are, some that I did recommend to you guys, and I still recommend you check them out just out of curiosity for what they bring to the table. But it also reminded me of something I talked about last night in the video where I uploaded, well, not uploaded, but I basically did a tier. I did a tier, if you will, a tier list of the hottest Sonic girls. Now, again, just to inform you, that was a list created by somebody else. I did one previously about Sonic, waifus and everything. Basically, female characters who were considered, waifus in the eyes of the community. Now, with all that out of the way, one of the things I did talk about when I would put characters in the top category of super NFSW hot, basically the kind that, the kind of characters that would basically, not only get it on with you in a very intimate, way, if you catch my drift, very sexual, erotic, intimate way, but also would try to get very, creative and innovative and, try to let that imagination of theirs become reality. And I did list a couple of characters up there. But I also mentioned something else while I was listing off a lot of the characters, in the different categories. I said that, I basically said something along the lines of, these characters being in these situations, not just due to fan fiction, but potentially in something official. Now, I'm not saying nothing official would ever happen, but I mentioned the fact that if an official adult Sonic comic of any kind was created, that I could see, just by the category I put all these girls in, I could see them being in that category, being presented in that way. And that got me thinking. What if, SEGA, let's just say, out of curiosity's sake, as I adjust my beanie here, my winter hat, if you will. But let's just say, out of curiosity's sake, SEGA decided one day, hey, you know what? There's money to be made in the adult media of entertainment, the adult genre. Let's go that route with our characters, from the Sonic franchise. Let's go that route. Now, like I said, I doubt that would ever happen, but just for curiosity's sake, let's kind of say that would happen. How would the characters be portrayed? What kind of stories would we get? And I bring these questions up because, like I said, when you look at these tier lists, like the one I did last night and I had done previously, and then you look at some of these stories written and posted at places like Ink Bunny and fanfiction.net and all that, and not just, written stories, typed up stories, but also stories that are, webcomics and such. They are webcomics, SFM webcomics, if you will, or even, heck, comics in general, if you will. SFM comics, motion comics, you name it. You kind of get the idea. Or even animation, SFM animation, if you will. That too is looked at from a creative spectrum, if you will. But the point I'm getting at is, you take a look at all of that, and everything. And, you know, you combine it kind of all together a little bit. And, you know, if SEGA was to let the guard down, if you will, and say, hey, you know, we're willing to let this happen, who do you think would be, what kind of stories do you think we'd get? How do you think the characters would be portrayed? Do you think they'd be similar to what we see, you know, in these SFM webcomics, animations, or even read in these stories? Do you think that's a possibility? You know, I think honestly there is. I think that honestly, you know, there is a possibility. We could see them that way. We could see them portrayed in that manner. Not saying we would, but, you know, again, you can't tell me that if they were to allow something like that to become a reality, that they wouldn't do some research and be like, okay, how do people, you know, see characters like Vanilla? How do they see characters like Rouge? How do they see characters like, you know, Actaual, if you will? How do they see characters like, let's say, Relic or Tangle or Whisper, you know, Sally, you know, if they want to use Sally and Bunny and all them? How do they view them? You know, how do they look at them? How do they view someone like Nicole, you know, and such? How do they view them, if you will? And they would basically, like I said, they'd probably try to do some research, look online on how they're portrayed in these kind of stories, animations, and webcomics, and probably go with that, or go and do something based off that, or at least a combination of it. And honestly, to me, that would probably be, you know, the best route for them to take if they wanted to do it. Now, as I mentioned, and I do want to remind you guys of this, I'm not saying that this is something that's going to happen. I'm not saying that this is something that, you know, is, you know, going to be done and made into something official, you know, down the line. You know, I'm not saying that. You know, I'm not saying that it's going to be something done and made officially down the line, because, let's be honest, there's no way SEGA would ever allow something like that to happen with any of their properties, period. I mean, no multimedia company, you know, with a franchise, you know, based around them would want something like that to, you know, become a reality. You know, they would not want anything like that to even show its face, if you catch my drift. But, you know, again, the the speculation, you know, is there to think about. But, like I said, I have to remind people, this is just, you know, just thinking outside the box, you know, just curiosity, just something that I want to talk about out of curiosity, you know, kind of on the fly, unscripted, if you will, while I'm walking home from work, not work, but from the bus stop. And, you know, it does make you think. It does make you think how they would be portrayed. I mean, I think a lot of people would look at, let's say, someone like Vanilla, if you will, and the way she's portrayed in SFM animations, you know, SFM webcomics, you know, fan fiction stories of the NFSW kind. They would look at her, and to get back to what I was saying earlier, upon doing research, they'd probably think, in my opinion, they'd probably depict her as being bi, you know, if you will, being bisexual, but in a way leaning more towards the lesbian aspect of that as well. Like, you know, she's bisexual, she'll have a relationship or have intimate moments with a male or a female, but lean more favorably towards female. That's, just how they, I'm assuming that's how they, base, portraying vanilla in these stories. The same with Rouge, but I could see Rouge being more like, more favorable towards the females than anything. Like she'd be really into them. You got characters like, you got, like Tails. People, I mean, this is something here that would really drive people crazy. Like, okay, how would you portray Tails? Well, obviously you'd have to age him up, which I don't think they'd have a problem doing. This is his 30th anniversary, so I don't think they would have a problem doing that if they chose to go this route. But, Tails aged up. He could be someone that's looked at as kind of like being bisexual. Like, he could be more in favor of being with a girl, but then again, you never know. That's just how it is. Sonic, on the other hand, obviously he'd be more into the girls and stuff, so that's a no-brainer. But what about characters like, let's say, Amy Rose? How would you portray someone like Amy Rose? How would her personality come out? And obviously her personality, I think, would be more in favor of being, focused on getting on with guys like Sonic and all that, but being someone that would be willing to test the grounds creatively, and probably have a moment with a girl, like, let's say, Rouge or Sally. Sally, if they want to use her character, she'd probably be in the bi area too, and be more favorable towards the girls, like Rouge. But again, she'd be more bi. Sally would basically be right down the middle bi, if you know what I mean. She'd be right down the middle, bisexual, with a little bit of that favoritism, more so than vanilla, but right in the middle of vanilla and Rouge, of being being favored towards the girls and all that. Bunny's character, on the other hand, you look at her, and obviously you would say she's going to be straight up lesbian, right? Not really. I think Bunny would basically be in the category of a Rouge. She'd be bisexual, but be very, very much in favor of being with girls. Even though she'd, like time with the guys and everything, Bunny would be the kind to be like, hey, I like the girls because they're more fun to be with or something. You kind of see what I'm saying. You kind of see what I'm getting at, though, right? Basically, and again, reminder, this is just something out of curiosity that I wanted to talk about while I walk home from the bus stop here in Newman. But, it's basically, it's really interesting to think about, a what-if scenario if this was to happen. Because believe you me, if it was to happen, there's no doubt in my opinion, that the people behind the idea, not saying it's ever going to happen, because like I mentioned, SEGA, would never let this happen, just like any company would never let the established characters be in a scenario like this. But you can't tell me that the people who would be behind the comic itself, if SEGA was to ever, let it happen, you can't tell me they wouldn't be doing research, all across the internet to see how we, the fans, as writers and artists, storytellers, portray certain characters, in these very adult manners, these very adult NFSW manners. You can't tell me they wouldn't do that, because they would, because like I said, it would give them an idea of, okay, this is how we see this is how people are presenting them. That's how we're going to try to present them here, if not add our own little twist to it. So, again, it's just something to really really think about, and just kind of put in kind of wonder out of curiosity of whether or not they would allow something like this to happen, which again I doubt they ever would, because Sega's not that desperate for attention. But again, it really makes you curious, just thinking about those animations, those webcomics, those stories of the adult NFSW kind, that if fans are willing to go that far, for free, basically, or even being commissioned on Patreon by people, fellow fans, if they're willing to go that far, basically almost for free, then, you can't tell me that if they were to get the opportunity, or anybody hired by Sega, or even hired by a comic book company, adult comic book company, from the adult industry, you can't tell me they were given the okay by Sega to make this happen, that they wouldn't do it, and they wouldn't base a lot of what they put in the comics, storyline-wise and character personality-wise, they wouldn't base it off how they see people doing it here on the internet almost for free. But I just wanted to bring that up, guys. Let me know what your thoughts are down below. Comment if you like. Love to hear from each and every one of you. I am home now, guys. So, until next time, again, just wanted to give you my thoughts. Just talk about this out of curiosity. And until then, I'm out.